Hello, welcome to Showboys. I was, for some reason about to do like the intro that I record for our audio only episodes, and yeah, that almost got awkward. But now it's even more awkward because I'm explaining what was going on in my mind as the show opened. Anyways, welcome guys. We're here the second to last Thursday in March. We are in the semifinals of the Showboys March Madness streaming service original series tournament we've been going through all month, and we have a fun episode planned for you guys. We have a lot to get through, as you'll notice. Jordan is here joining us. Welcome, sir. Thank you for coming on tonight.
How's it going?
Pretty well. Good.
Can you hear me okay?
Yep. You're good.
I guess so. You respond, I guess, to start.
Yeah, we do have a lot to get into, so I'm going to just breeze through the house cleaning stuff, and then we can get right into it. Thank you to our top tier patrons, Yusuf H, Tim B, and Joe C. Your continued support means the world to us. It helps us keep the lights on, so to speak. So thank you guys. All of our other patrons, you guys are awesome also, and we appreciate you. If you're interested or want to learn what Patreon is and how it helps us and what you can do to support us, you can head over to patreon.com/showboyspodcast. Check it out and sign up. The link actually is in the episode description if you don't feel like typing all that stuff in. So check that out. We'd appreciate it. Nick, how are you tonight?
I'm good. Glad I can make it. Glad to be here. Happy we have a full house this evening.
Yes. StreamYard just launched an update that we were having fun with before we went live that allows us to customize the screen layout and camera sizes. So we're all fancy tonight. Dad, how are you doing tonight?
Wonderful.
Yeah, did you get your haircut just for tonight?
I did. I even did some makeup and I got my nails done and
bikini wax.
I'm feeling fancy. Never mind the massive swimsuit hanging in my basement.
What?
Yeah, what is that? Like a cat hammock?
That was a swimsuit.
It's a swimsuit.
Yes, that's Jeff Speedo.
Chad, how are you tonight, man?
I'm great. I'm here and I'm ready to slap some dad around.
What?
Hey, wow, I'm embracing the douchebag comment from last week, man.
There you go.
Taking it fully going all the way.
All right.
Someone's got to be the heel, right? So let's get into the rules here first before we get into the matchup itself. So this round, of course, this is the semifinal round. So we have 4 shows remaining. We have 2 matchups to get through tonight. These rounds tonight and next week are going to look a little different than the previous 3 episodes. Instead of all deliberating together through these matchups, we are going debate style. We had some good podcasting friends from Be Hero Fights, shout out, who had a whole entire podcast centered around this format, and it was super fun. I was a part of an episode once. Jordan was a part of an actual tournament they had for the Joker in the cinematic universes and stuff. It's super cool. Their podcast was really cool, so go check it out. But they've inspired the way that we're going to do our last 2 rounds here. So the show from each division will be represented by that host in a debate against the opponent. So how that's going to work, each panel member or host will get 1 5-minute round to state their case for the show. After that, we will get 1 2-minute round for rebuttal or any other points you want to make, whatever. And then lastly, each host will get a 1-minute round as a closing argument, their final case for their show. In between those rounds, the judges, of course, can ask any questions for any info they need to help sway their votes. And after the closing arguments, the judges will reveal their votes and a winner will be decided. We did have a small fear of potential ties because, of course, there were 2 hosts and 2 judges. So Jordan was super kind and able to join us tonight as a guest judge. So that's why he is here. He's going to, give us an odd number of voters so we can't have ties. So the winner of each Final Four matchup tonight will face off in the championship next week. And of course, like we have throughout the entire tournament, we will try our hardest. However, these next 2 rounds are kind of built on personal bias because we have to argue on behalf of these shows. So, but we're still going to try to approach these as objective as possible in the cases that we state. So that's kind of how the rundown is going to work tonight. And of course, the criteria is the same. It's been through the entire tournament so far. We still have our story category, characters, aesthetic, world building, cultural impact, and then a bonus category for music. The debaters can, of course, bring anything they want into their arguments from any of these categories. So it'll be fun to see how everyone decides to argue on behalf of their shows. Do we have any questions from the participants or judges before we get going?
No.
Dad's
We'll
worried.
take that as a no.
A resounding no.
Yeah. All right. Well, perfect. Our first matchup here actually is Dad versus Chad, and so I'll kind of set the stage here. We have House of the Dragon coming out of Division Chad, the HBO Max powerhouse that was just, I don't know, maybe the committee didn't get around to watching the entire series before assigning the seeds, but for whatever reason, House of the Dragon slipped in as a 9 seed. So kind of a dark horse through Division Chad, making it all the way to the semifinals. And it will be going up against the Netflix juggernaut Stranger Things. Again, shocking 11 seed out of Division Dad. So I'm excited. Nick was kind of postulating before we started that we have like an old head versus a new show. Like, what's going to happen here? This is like, I don't know. It's exciting. Both massive pop culture phenomena. So without further ado, we will give the floor to, let's flip a coin to see who goes first, unless do you guys want to do that? Fair and
If we
square?
can see the coin.
I let Dad go first.
You want?
Ooh.
All right, you'll let Dad go first. Perfect.
Sounds like Chad won the coin toss already.
Chad won
Yeah.
the virtual coin toss.
Oh, was that a win? I
How'd
would
you do
assume-
that?
I would assumed being first was the win. I was just giving up.
I
The
just took
ability.
that as like when the team that wins, they're just like, they can go first.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
this is what you do.
They just-
we'll kick this direction.
They know it's not even a competition.
Yeah.
I actually wanted Mike to just like flip it, and the coin just goes straight behind him, hits the shelf behind him, and collapses.
Yeah.
The picture of the wall of his wall.
Yeah.
Oh, that yeah.
Oh yeah,
no.
Jordan wasn't here for that comment, I don't think.
No.
Somebody
Still.
asked why I have a framed picture of my wall on my wall.
It was probably the funniest comment we've
Yeah, it's
ever
the-
gotten.
Yeah, best comment we've got.
So I have a timer set here for 5 minutes. So without further ado, the floor is yours, Dad, starting now.
I'm nervous.
I am too. Okay, so I just want to echo what Mike said about my show as being a juggernaut. I mean, who can come up against a juggernaut like Stranger Things? Anyway, so there's a couple things I want to touch on. The blending of genres of this show creates a unique and compelling storyline that keeps everyone engaged throughout the entire series, and there's a lot of it. When they can mold multiple genres in a show, I think it makes for a really captivating experience. And I think it's a lot to do with the characters. They help drive the main story forward, and their interaction with the story while dealing with their own story, their own stuff is fun to watch. And it bleeds into the character section a little bit, but their stories are interesting. Yeah, let's see. The show is really good at building tension and suspense, and they even have some lighthearted moments, which are fun because it can't be all serious, right? The characters are frequently put in dangerous situations, and we all wondering how it's going to work out. And I really only need to mention one character, 11, obviously. She might be able to take on a dragon and win. I'm just saying. Her arc,
Flip for it. I'm just kidding.
yeah, her arc is very fun. It's about her trying to find herself and going through a lot of weird stages of her, just trying to fit back into like a normal life. Watching these characters grow into rowdy teenagers is a little painful with all their angst, but it's fun, and the group of friends discovering who they are individually and together, and then like it goes to show that they're better together in the end, and they accomplish a lot when they work together. They've done a lot of great work with capturing the look and feel of the 80s, and even the taste and smell, from the clothes, the waffles, the hairstyles, to technology and pop culture references. It's like 80% of the show.
I see what you did there.
I hope someone would have. The world building is so rich in detail. It's so immersive. You've got Hawkins that feels like a real place with real people. You have the Upside Down where
2-minute warning, by the way.
evil dwells, and they even blend the two. And I think the way that they blend those two realities is just amazing. And who doesn't love the 80s? So like I would say it has a very passionate fan community, which would be the cultural impact, right, Mike?
Mm-hmm.
So you got a bunch of fan art, fan fiction, and like even the music, like the 80s is a long time ago, and the fact that some of these musicians are coming back, making their place back on the charts, it's kind of like revived them in a way. I feel like the show's brought back a lot of love for the 80s. And that's a wonderful thing to see. I mean, the 80s is amazing. The creepy and otherworldly tone that's looming overhead is very fun. There's a sense of dread that you don't really know what's going to happen. And then it happens, and it's great. It's really, really great.
30-second warning.
Stranger Things is awesome, and it should win. I'll end it there.
25-second
I'll end
warning.
I'll end it there.
I'm ready to vote.
Man, 5 minutes is a long time. Yeah,
It really is.
we almost
All right.
we were gonna go longer too.
Yeah,
It went pretty
we
quick,
were, yeah.
honestly. 3
Um,
minute warning.
My
Well,
mouth is really dry.
It went
Yeah.
it went quick maybe for us sitting here
Yeah.
not doing the talking.
Right. Yeah. Just wait. I'm sure.
In pure
And
silence.
it felt like an eternity for
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
So I'll start it off with
What are you
any
starting off?
questions.
Oh.
So you mentioned the blending of genres being a positive.
Yeah.
Can you just explain just in a little more depth what makes that a big draw of the show?
I mean, you've got sci-fi, you've got horror, you've got drama. All these things just work really well together, and they've shown that it can work together, and they've pulled it off very well. I mean, there's no denying it. I mean, it's a great show, and they do those things, all those things well.
Yeah.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah. Do either of the other judges have questions for Jeff?
I think I'm good.
Could you expand on essentially, you said like the characters, right? And they're kind of better together.
Yeah.
Kind of like that positive aspect or impact that has, like why that makes it a better show.
Isn't that a political campaign, by the way? I'm just kidding.
Is it better together?
Better together. yeah.
Better together. Did I say that?
You did. I wrote it down
I'm so ashamed.
because I'm logging your points.
Can I
and
like take
you
that
made.
back?
Build back better, Jeff.
You started
no.
with friendship and just how it's just better together, and I just wanted you to expand on that one specifically.
This all makes sense now. Nick's like, yeah, I have a question.
So like in season 4, when they're all separated, I mean,
Mhm.
they get a bunch of stuff done, but like it just shows that like they're meant to be together as a group because they've done everything before that together and they've accomplished a lot of things. They fought off Demodogs or whatever they're called,
Demogorgons.
Demogorgons, and Demodogs,
They do call them demi-dogs for the quadrupeds eventually.
Demidogs.
Second season.
So yeah, like that would be the best point to that is that they were kind of just all over the place and like out there trying to find themselves, and they didn't really have that problem when before that when they were together, with the exception of 11, who was going through her all boys suck phase and her goth phase. It wasn't like, so I guess for her, for example, she kind of like pushed away and she was like, I don't know who I am. I'm kind of lost. And
So are you saying like the writing about that aspect of the show is good, exceptionally good, compared to other shows that attempt to do that with a similar concept, like friendship, togetherness, things like that? Okay.
yes, plus it's in the 80s. Friendship was better in the 80s.
Yeah, I noticed that most
Can
of the points
confirm.
just had 80s
Yes.
attached to it.
Yeah, 80%
Not a
Age
bad
friendships
tactic.
succeeded from the 80s.
All 80s all the time, baby.
Yeah.
I got your
Um,
theme. All right, thank you. That was the
nostalgia.
one thing you weren't like 80s, so I didn't know where
Yeah.
to fit into the rest of the puzzle. So
There you go. Friendship,
thank you.
80s. Good.
And Jordan,
Play
you said
outside.
you were good, or did anything pop up? for you.
Something popped up.
You still hung up on the better together thing.
Something haunting about this conversation.
I quit after this.
What
2
would
weeks in
you
a row.
say, out of all the things that Stranger Things brought back into the spotlight, I guess, whether it be Dungeons and Dragons or Metallica these days, anyway.
Right.
What was your favorite thing that it like kind of referenced back to, and you were like, this show I love it. It's good.
The hair.
The hair. Love it.
Okay.
So technically, I don't know.
Didn't see that one coming. Not gonna lie.
Technically, I mean, I grew up in the 80s, but I wasn't really an 80s kid. I kind of like missed that a little bit. I'm more of a 90s
Oh.
kid.
You're saying the 80s moms. That's what you're referencing here.
The 80s moms. Come on, man. Riding bikes, like just being a kid, like not having to worry about being outside or.
Oh,
being
they had
out-
to worry about being outside.
Well, they did.
Yeah,
you know,
Yeah, I'm with you.
fair enough. But like just that time period, the good things of the 80s is just being able to be a kid. And
Literally not doing what we're doing right now. Gotcha. Yeah, I like it.
Yeah.
yeah,
All right.
Yep.
Perfect. Well, thank you, sir. We will shift the uncomfortable ness over to Chad here. Are you ready, sir?
Yeah, I
right,
guess.
your
This might be the
5
most
minutes.
nervous I've ever been on Showboys, to be honest with you.
That's hilarious.
Really?
Dude,
Yeah,
'cause
it's
Jeff
very-
was like,
I'm not a good
seeing
debater.
Chad-
Jordan knows this.
I'm
Like
not
I had the arguments for video games being more expensive in front of my face during the arguments and almost lost it. So like I had the data right here and I couldn't
That's
get
not
it
your
out.
fault. George's just so charismatic.
Yeah,
He comes
it's,
to make
that's
it's
why I was like,
hard.
yeah,
it is
tagging
hard
him in.
to
And
debate.
I don't
Jordan.
use notes either. That's always my key. Is it
dude,
like,
I don't know
it's
how
almost
you
like
do
taking
that.
notes.
Dude, I couldn't do that, man.
I have to
I'd be
take
stumbling
notes.
over my words.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it says, when people have notes, they see me in the notes. They're like, how does he not have notes?
Yeah.
Dude, I even
Out
have
on my wall is just written.
Yeah.
I have notes and I still stumble over the words.
Yeah.
Notes make you stumble. in my
Yeah, that's
opinion.
true. That's definitely true.
You
Definitely
just
true.
gotta speak from the heart. All right, so Chad, your 5 minutes begins right now.
So I'm gonna talk a little bit about stories and characters and aesthetics because I think that's where House of the Dragon stands out versus Stranger Things and versus its prequel series. So I want to touch on the story first. I think it's really cool that we got House of the Dragon, which at the inception of the thought in my mind sounded like it was going to be a very simple story compared to coming off of Game of Thrones, where there's different storylines in different parts of the world, and there's a lot going on, and then we're going to narrow it all back down to the Red Keep, and the story's going to be told there. And I think it did a really good job of building an elaborate story just around the small cast of characters that we have. But I think the most important thing for me as far as House of the Dragon goes are the aesthetics versus its original series. It could have easily came out and been exactly story-wise, exactly like it. I mean, we have a lot of characters that mimic characters in Game of Thrones that are in House of Dragons. Could have came out and looked identical to it, but it didn't. It came out and looked radically different. The world is radically different. I think the world building here is really cool because we're seeing a different world. It's the same world that we know, but different families running it. We have a lot more dragons, obviously. Those are a big part of it. We're seeing the dragon pit and stuff that we saw in Game of Thrones as ruins, as full-fledged, buildings and stuff. And then I want to talk about the characters because I think the characters are the strong suit versus Stranger Things as well as the original series, and just their transformation over the course of it. Now, we do get several actress changes and actor changes. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about their actual characters changing over the course, whether it be Rhaenyra being the, somewhat rebellious teen growing into the would-be queen over the course of the entire series. And there's a lot like that. Alicent's starts out as the little princess that can't do anything wrong and is mad about the littlest inconveniences, and then she becomes really kind of a vicious character later on in the series. Same with all the kids too. They start out, innocent as kids, and as they grow throughout the series, they build themselves into a really good cast of villains that we have building. So I think that those things coming together, I don't know. It just definitely stands above Stranger Things. I think if you look at the first season of Stranger Things, that would have been if we didn't get a second season, it would have been pretty complete. You know what I mean? You could have one-offed that and been done. And I think House of the Dragon did not do that. I think we built up for much more coming over, and that can maybe weird some people out because it might be a little boring through that first season as we're building characters and we're doing the palace intrigue stuff and we're jumping times, and there's like fucking 7 characters that have the same name. It's like, what? Like, this could get a little confusing.
2 minute
But I think
warning.
2-minute warning. My gosh, I thought it was like 4:45 minute warning. And I think what really makes House of the Dragon stand out is it taking something that was already pre-established with Game of Thrones and flipping it on its head, but keeping it somewhat familiar, whether it be with the aesthetics, the locations. Seeing all the different kinds of dragons is really awesome. We only saw 3 of the same identical looking dragons in the original series. So, I think that might wrap me pretty early here, but
Yeah, you still got 1:20 if you want to use it.
yeah, I think I'm good for now. Ask your questions.
All right. Nick, do you have anything?
Yeah. So I think where you're getting with this point, but you didn't quite land there.
Okay.
And you talked about like the character arcs, right? Not so much the acting per se, but the actual stories, the written part of the stories.
Mhm.
What about the actual acting from our actors here in the cast?
Yeah, I think they all stand out as very, very strong. The only one that doesn't stand out acting wise to me is young Alicent. I think she could have been a little bit better on the acting side. But I was primarily not necessarily talking about the acting, but the character progression that they go through during the phase of the first season. And I think what they do really well in this show, and this is really an acting thing, is they build a lot of tension with no dialogue whatsoever. Whether it's Alicent walking into the wedding with her green dress, the king walking into the throne room there towards the end of the series. There's a lot of stuff that happens in the show where there's no dialogue whatsoever, but it's some of the tensest moments in the series. Don't know if that answered your question. I hope it did.
It worked.
Jordan, anything from you, sir?
Yeah, I thought Chad was going to open with, all right, you want to talk about hair?
You know what, dude? It's so funny because I meant to say it at the end and I forgot. I didn't want to open with it, but
I think one of the strongest points of the entire show for House of the Dragon is actually the relationship between the king and his brother. Towards the end of his life, he's putting the stuff aside, and all the tension they've had, he's helping because he knows he's towards the end of his life. And I think that was one of the biggest draws to this entire show, that relationship. And it's, I think, most of what you said pretty much touched on it, I guess. So not to go into too much of that, but what, in your opinion, do you think that? Well, I guess we'll get there with that. Who had? Which is your favorite dragon? I'm gonna go with this.
Man, that was a trip.
yeah.
I have more questions for later, so
it's definitely Vhagar. I think Vhagar is just a haunting. It's got some awesome haunting imagery behind him because he's so massive, and you have like a little kid going after him too, which I think played really well. But I also like Daemon's dragon's freaking awesome. I just can't get behind the movement. The movement just looks weird to me. If they get the movement down, he's going to be badass. But for whatever reason, he's just not moving correct in my eyes. So
Serpent.
Yeah. So you bring up the aesthetics, right? You mentioned they were better than Game of Thrones. And they're different. Can you maybe expand upon that a little bit? And then secondly, like what puts this category above Stranger Things aesthetics?
I mean, they're kind of hard to compare because they're so radically different as far as Stranger Things and House of the Dragon. I think House of the Dragon does really good work with the cinematography in certain shots, whether it be the dragon coming through the clouds was an awesome shot. The sun in the background while they're flying is really cool. There's a lot of really cool shots that you got maybe towards like season 8 of Game of Thrones. There were some really cool shots with the moon and the dragons in the Long Night episode. But you got more of it definitely throughout House of the Dragon. And it did feel, even though I complain about the aesthetics in the first season, it's really the first half of the first season. By the time that you get to the second half, the aesthetics get a lot better. You can tell that they're figuring out how to work with what they're using. Did that answer all your questions?
Yeah, maybe since it's hard to compare with Stranger Things, maybe explain what makes the aesthetics from House better than Thrones.
Yeah, I think Thrones has a really good kind of grounded look to it. A lot of those shots were shot on scene somewhere. I mean, House of the Dragon obviously has on scene stuff, but they're using that 3D soundstage. I forget the name of it, even though Nick tells me every single time. Same.
So I do the same thing. I never remember it.
So I think that gives them a little bit more play in making some of these locations look a little bit more realistic to the world, more haunting imagery around them, especially Dragonstone's got a lot of haunting fog around it and stuff. So I think as far as if you compare House of the Dragon season 1 to the first 7 seasons of Game of Thrones, I think it beats it. There's some really good stuff in Game of Thrones season 8 that's kind of mimicked here in House of the Dragon. But yeah, it's really just the cinematography they're using to shoot some of these versus what Game of Thrones or Stranger Things was doing.
Okay. All right. Let's move on to the round of butts. We have 2 minutes
Jeff wins.
per debater. So we'll give the floor back to you, Dad.
Not that, but okay.
You have 2 minutes. Let me know when you're ready, and I will start the timer.
What am I doing again?
So you can play off of anything that Chad said about his show, make some comparisons between your show and his show, because again, you guys got to remember you're pitting these shows against each other.
Attack
Um,
mode.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
All right.
you can either show the fangs and go after House of the Dragon. You can further solidify any points that you think you may need to do for your case. You can expand upon any of the questions that any of us have asked either of you. You have 2 minutes to continue to build your case,
Okay.
starting now.
So I feel like Stranger Things kind of had it figured out from the start, or at least it looked like it. They did. They weren't confused with how to make something look real, like a dragon. Sorry. Okay. The beef. Okay. Let me back up real quick.
No, keep going, brother. You're doing
No,
great.
this really sucks. Shut up, Chad. All I want to say about House of Dragon is it's hard to hate on this show. Let's just be honest. Like, if I can nitpick, I can nitpick. It has the things I like about a show. It has dragons, right? I love the time period, but maybe not so much the incest.
1 minute warning.
I could do without that, but hey, you can't have it all, right? So
Oh, they have it all.
They
Yeah.
they do. The beef I have with the story is the time jumping. I'm sure you've heard it. I'm sure you've all heard it. Now, without the context of the actual story and the whole story and what they're building to, like what's it called, the Dragon's Dance or whatever.
Dance of the Dragons.
Dance of the Dragons.
30 seconds.
I just feel like the story could have breathed a little bit more. I mean, I felt like they were kind of like, are they rushing to that? I feel like they could have done it differently, is what I'm saying. Like they could have done flashbacks.
10 seconds.
Blah, 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 blah. Yeah, that's all.
I was gonna
Perfect.
say
We're down to 2, 1. Time is up.
I was gonna say, you know
Oh,
how they
wow.
can what?
My phone made a sound.
Okay.
I don't have to stare at it like meticulously.
And not pay
waiting to
attention.
see if
Yeah.
Hey, we're learning things as we go here. So, Nick, let's start off the questioning round with you, sir, since you have a.
You got to ask me questions now?
Yeah, we can continue to ask.
I just thought it'd be great, like if the combatant that the versus the other person like interrupts like their moment, we get to add like 30 seconds, but that's actually like a negative in this
It's
situation.
like soccer stoppage time or whatever.
Yeah.
They just
Yeah,
get like an
another 30
unknown
seconds. He's
amount
like,
of
"No."
bonus time at the end.
Dang it.
Oh, by the way,
Subtract.
anyone watching along live, feel free to ask questions so we can throw at the debaters. Maybe a little late now since we have I don't know, we're halfway through their debate.
fine. It's
But
fine.
anyways, yes, go ahead, Nick. Continue if you have a question.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm so thrown off with the idea of giving Dad 30 more seconds to talk.
Please don't do that.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I guess I don't have anything like pointed direct at that. Most of that was, trying not to nitpick at House of the Dragons, but then you end up like just slightly nitpicking at it.
Slightly, because there's
slightly.
only a little bit to nitpick. I mean,
Right.
Isn't that the point though?
Right. Yeah.
I tried.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. You got your little nitpicks out. That's fair. Do those same nitpicks apply to Stranger Things in any way?
No.
Of course he's gonna say no.
You got to ask. You got to wait
You
for Chad to
ask that,
ask
though.
or do that.
I mean, yeah, you can say no, and then I still reserve my thoughts on your answer. So fair.
Reserve your answer or your whatever.
Yeah, I would like to we nitpick the time jump in House of the Dragon, which I think is a valid nitpick. But I want to ask, so one of the things that you listed as like a positive in round one was the characters, and especially the characters, how like what we get when all the characters are together, which I think you also kind of alluded to, the time apart kind of not being so great. With that, I totally agree. I think the individual time is kind of like, for the most part, like a real drag and a pretty negative side of Stranger Things. How, like, what, considering that, like, what in your mind still takes Stranger Things up above House of the Dragon, in terms of the characters? Because I think that negative is kind of a pretty big negative. So, like, what in your mind regarding the Stranger Thing characters still puts them above the House of the Dragon characters?
Yeah, because that point that you made very early on in your opening statement was around the realm of they are captivating characters. So I guess, Mike, are you asking him to bounce that against House of the Dragon?
Yeah, because they are captivating, and I agree when they're together, it's really great. I also agree when they're not together, it's not so great.
With some exceptions.
What still elevates them above House of the Dragon's characters, even with that kind of like blot on their record?
I would say the connections they have. They've had time to go through this adventure together, to become close. They've had the time to interact with each other and form relationships, and it's believable. I wasn't really like totally convinced with the characters of House of the Dragon. Not so much like with Game of Thrones. It was a little bit different. Like, I felt like the characters were actually like having relationships, like they were actually
they were having relationships.
With family. Yeah. And I will also say that there's no incest in Stranger Things, so
that's always a plus in my book.
I don't know if that answers your question. I just feel like they put a little bit more time and effort into the characters and their relationships and their and even like character to character, and then all together, like it's all believable. And yeah.
Okay. Jordan, anything from you, sir?
Yeah, I have a question. So on the Stranger Things banner over there, that's 11 at the top, right?
Yeah.
Who in the hell is that below her?
Will.
That's
I know.
Will.
I know.
Or Will's mom. We haven't decided yet.
Yeah.
That's been
That is weird how it looks like Will's mom too.
Yeah.
Crazy.
They
Sorry,
planned that.
it was like staring at me the whole time. And then
Yeah.
you have Frodo beneath.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's looking for ET to go take the ring to Mordor.
So I just wanted to just add some context to the conversation during this. So it's not exactly a quick time here, or a question. It's interesting because you kind of have Stranger Things, which is it's based around the pop culture, where it breeds a fan base that would care about something like House of the Dragon or Game of Thrones in general, right? It's very interesting to have these two going against each other. They definitely chase each other in context, and I think it's kind of fitting these two are right here together. So I guess I would ask this. This is, again, more context as the conversation. Which particular Stranger Things character could you see existing in House of the Dragon?
Easy one. Come on, Dad, you got this.
Hmm. I don't know. Vecna.
Oh,
Okay, I can see it.
that's fair.
That would have been my answer.
Yeah,
That
that's
would've
interesting.
been my
Yeah,
answer.
it's just it's a very interesting thought of seeing like some of the characters who cross over, whether it's the humans or the monsters, and it all pans together. So I kind of want to be used to kind of absorb in more of the information. I don't want to try to throw anyone off.
Super Bob.
I swear I thought of Bob while I was talking. Like,
Yeah, for sure.
I
But
swear.
the other definitely applies too. There's always crossover in the Game of Thrones universe. All right, so Chad, your moment of butts has arrived. You have 2 minutes. Are you ready, sir?
I am.
All right, the floor is yours, starting now.
Okay, I do want to touch on a couple things that you commented about. A, incest, like get over it, bro. Who cares? These are actors. They're not actually having incestual relationships. Let's start there, okay? Second, the time jumping, throwing people off really confuses me because I think they did a hell of a job with the time jumps, and they could have been a lot nastier and a lot messier if they didn't execute those time jumps as well as they did. I really had no part, not for a moment in the first season was I was like, who's this? After a time jump, who's that? They look like whoever they were time jumping from. So I think they did a really good job with that, even with having multiple characters that have the same names, multiple characters that have very similar names. I think they did a really, really good job on that. And then I really need to touch on your rushing thing because the entire first season is building to the war, but like, what are we rushing to? Like that, I think that most people's complaints with the show is that it was a little slower than anything. I
minute
didn't feel
warning.
like they were really rushing through much of anything at all. I think they told an important part of the story at the beginning, which we talked about last week, could have been flashbacks or could have been just left out and told in dialogue later on. They told, half of the season was devoted really to those younger characters. And then I do want to touch on your characters in Stranger Things and you saying that they're great when they're together, but they're not great when they're apart. And that is a big issue for me. I think Mike might have the same issue because they're really apart for the entirety of the season outside of the last couple episodes of the season when they all come back together. And the other problem I have with the characters is that there's not a lot of character development through the entirety of these characters. Eleven's the same. Mike is the same. Dustin's the same. Steve Harrington had a small character adjustment in the first season, and then he was the same. Like he was a dick in the
Time
first
is
couple
up.
minutes.
That actually
then he was
scared
the
the
same.
crap out of me because
Whew.
I was not expecting that. And my phone just started going.
Yeah, you didn't give me any warnings or anything, bro.
Let him off the
I gave
leash,
you, I
man.
gave you 1 minute, but then
All
I
you
was
got was
captivated
a minute.
I got
didn't even hear the minute. I
captivated
was
by
just-
your last point there that I didn't give you the 30-second warning.
Chad Unchained. Yeah.
Wow, that was
Okay.
fire, man.
That was great.
We'll start with you, Jordan. Any questions for Chad before we move on to closing arguments?
What? Yeah. So how? I know you keep talking about the time. Like the time jump's not a big deal, but if you were to be in a room full of like let's say 10 or 20 people, do you think? And you asked them, how many of you made it through? How many did you not make it through the whole season? And you took the vote. How many people do you think would stop watching it because of the time jump? Like, how many people do you know like watched it up to the time jump and then stopped after that point?
Yeah, I personally don't know anybody. That was definitely a concern for me when, especially when we were doing the companion series, and I kind of started to really fall in love with the younger characters of Rhaenyra and Allison. I was very, very worried about this time jump. But the problem with it is that those actresses nail their characters equally as good, if not better. Especially Allison's older character or older actress is amazing in the second half of the season. So I would kind of feel bad for somebody that dipped out after the time jump because I think they missed a lot of really good stuff.
Okay.
Nick.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're kind of, I think maybe this is at the trailing end of your argument or somewhere in that fire storm. So were you saying that obviously I think you're referencing the last season, predominantly in Stranger Things. Like you're saying they are good when they are together. Like that's obviously when they're at their strongest. But like
Correct.
once they separate into like different storylines, it really kind of falls apart as
Correct.
as a series. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I think that's where you're going.
Yeah. That's where I was going, and then I got kind of thrown off course by looking at the characters and being like, yeah, he's the same in season 1 as he is in season 5. Like a lot of the characters that you look at, they don't really have any kind of character progression whatsoever. Like Joyce Byers, still the psycho mom through the entire series. You know what I mean? So,
But she's dating what's his face? Hopper.
She probably was 10 years before that as well.
yes, exactly. Yeah.
All right. Does that wrap up your question, Nick?
Yeah, I just want to kind of see that one all the way through. Michael?
So obviously the hotbed topic so far of this debate, or at least most of the conversation, has been revolving around the characters of each show. Stranger Things obviously has a much longer lifespan than House of the Dragon up to this point, right? Yeah, 4 seasons to 1 season. But I will ask you a similar question that I asked Jeff. Even, taking into consideration, we only had 8 to 10 episodes. I forget how many episodes, but a much smaller amount of episodes of House of the Dragon than we did Stranger Things. In that limited time, what can you give me like a specific example of a strong character and what like puts the House of the Dragon characters above the Stranger Things characters?
Yeah, I can definitely do that. I can give you 2. I can give you Damon, who kind of starts out the series as like the wild card rogue prince all over the place, chopping people's arms off and beating up criminals. And then he slowly transitions throughout the series to become more and more of a serious character. I mean, he has his falls here and there and some bad decisions throughout, but by the end of the series, he's honed in. He knows what side of the war he's going to land on, obviously. And then I really have to bring up Paddy Constantine's King Viserys, who goes through a wild freaking transformation through the whole of the series, from the good peacetime king to the shit might hit the fan here soon king to, okay, shit is hitting the fan. And I got to wrestle it all together, all while melting away from whatever disease that he has and still nailing the character in every single scene. One of his most powerful scenes is late in the series when he walks into the throne room to defend Rhaenyra and he can barely even walk. And that's another really good character moment between the other character I was talking about, Damon. So I think when you look at Stranger Things, it's had 5 seasons to flesh out their characters versus House of the Dragon. It's not even close. I think House of the Dragon's characters are infinitely more fleshed out in a single season than Stranger Things was.
Yeah. And, you often hear of roles taking a toll on the actors and actresses that play them. I just wonder if Paddy has had time to like fully recover from season 1 here. Well, that was a terrible joke. We do have a question from chat. Joe says, if train A leaves the station at 7:15 a.m. and train B has 7 passengers, how many of them are ready to see Arcane smash Chernobyl?
Oh, wow.
That is a great question, man, but I hope they all are. Because I know I'm ready. All right, so the questioning phase is complete. The contestants will now have 1 minute to state their closing argument for their show. Up first is Dad. Are you ready, sir?
Yes.
Your minute begins now.
So, Stranger Things, you have a bunch of kids. They become angsty. It happens. I feel like season 4, even though like we want to bring up that, they're not so good when they're split up, I feel like this is one of those exceptions I was talking about. They were separated.
30 seconds.
And they all worked well in what they were doing. And and then they all came together at the end, and then crap hits the fan,
Better together. I got you.
and they're together.
10 seconds.
I'm done.
All right. Chad,
Yes,
1 minute. Are you ready?
I am.
It begins now.
So I just want to reiterate, looking at the characters from 5 seasons to 1 season, there's one of these shows that is vastly superior to
4 seasons.
4 seasons, whatever. 4 seasons, it's vastly superior as far as character development. That's really where this, even Game of Thrones stands tall, but House of the Dragon as well. And I also want to point out that the kids in Stranger Things saved a town. The kids in House of the Dragon started a war for the fate of the continent. Keep that in mind as you make your votes. Who had the bigger
fish to fry.
moments as
25
children in
seconds.
each show? But yeah, outside of that, I just want to reiterate that I think that we are only on the very beginning of this show. I think it's going to get vastly superior. We had a lot of building over this first season. So even though we are comparing a show that's been long running to one that's not been long running, I think that this one lands a better first season than Stranger Things did, which really could have ended after that first season with
And
maybe
time
some
is up.
complaints.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen, for your very intriguing debates. We appreciate you.
Whew,
Your
what an
cases
elephant lifted
presented.
off of my chest. It's in your hands now.
I'm so glad it's
Alright.
over.
I'm
So
glad it's
now-
over, bro. Can't wait to
Now
be up
we
there.
We will have. Oh, your time is coming, my friend. So now we will just reveal our choice for the winner with 0 deliberation among the judges, because this is all happening live. I guess any deliberation will be done right here on screen in front of the contestants, in front of everyone. So, Jordan, very stoic looking over there in the corner.
I
My
thought it was a
good friend.
tiebreaker.
Yeah, he's
No, no, no.
tiebreaker.
Well, no, no,
Yeah.
no. Yeah, well, in
Jordan definitely gets
essence-
to go last.
Okay,
You can't.
okay,
You can't
okay.
make
I thought-
yourself go last. Mike.
I thought
All right,
Nick,
Nick.
was a tiebreaker.
Nick, you go first due to your adamant request to never be the tiebreaker. I will let you go first to establish the voting trend.
Tiebreaker less. That's all. I'm just getting this rut of always being the tiebreaker. Tiebreaker less. I do like doing it sometimes, especially when it's for myself.
Right?
So, yeah, I think. Do I get to say like my piece on the matter?
Yeah,
Or
yeah.
I
this
guess
is
I have
our point to
forcibly
give
vote,
our
just like-
thoughts.
Oh,
Now remember, we gotta we have to base our decision on what was presented to us.
mhm, mhm.
So keep that in mind. But yes, go ahead and give your
Dad's face.
give your thoughts, your case, and your vote, please.
Well, in that case, I was totally never mind. No. So yeah, so based on like what was presented, and I'm glad Chad finally arrived at this point. But what House of the Dragon sets out to do in like one season, and how much it's able to accomplish, and the only thing I would add that you could have done better about your side of the fence, Chad, is that you wouldn't have needed to mention Game of Thrones at all.
Yeah.
This show just kind of stands on its own pedestal. So that combined with I think how much Stranger Things does lean into like the 80s, right? And some tropey stuff that goes on. To me, it does have that little bit of a Mando effect where it's part gag reel, part just fanfare. Not that House of Dragon doesn't have its fair share of fanfare, but I think they rely on it a little too much. Whereas in a lot of the categories, House of the Dragon just like kind of really eats them alive to not perfection, but hey, it eats them alive. That's what dragons do, right? So I give the House of the Dragon. That's my vote.
Okay. Regardless of tie situations, Jordan, you will still be giving your vote just because I want to hear. With that said, I'll go unless you would like to go.
Okay.
So I would agree with Nick that like one of the downsides of your arguments, Chad, was a lot of comparing to Game of Thrones instead of comparing to Stranger Things. And
Not
like
what I
Nick said, I don't even if I mean I just the comparisons to Game of Thrones just aren't even necessary just due to the show itself outside of the format of tonight. But my one thing that is still a hang up for me with House of the Dragons is the time jump, and I agree with you, Chad, that they executed it very, very well. There wasn't like any tripping or stumbling with, changing actresses, any of that nature. I just feel like, to Dad's point there, what's the rush? Like, I would have loved an entire season of the childhood phase because, like you said, the actors and that the ages of those characters were great, and that story, seeing them develop into what we eventually get, like 4 or 5 episodes into the season, was good. And I would have been here for an entire 10 episodes of that. With that being said, your points on character strength, totally right. The characters are all intriguing and powerful, and there's a lot of growth from episode 1 to the finale, and all of the characters, even side characters. It is hard to go up against the pop culture phenomenon that Stranger Things is. And like Nick said, it really leans into all the things that people like, right? You got the 80s, you got the bright colors, you got the pop culture references just laced through every episode. But since characters was the big, contention point of the debate here, again, I agree with you, Chad. The characters of Stranger Things just really fall short. They, aside from physical growth of the actors, like nothing else really changes from season to season.
They literally age. No.
Yes, they just got older. That aside, they are fun, and like Jeff said, when they're together, like it's fun to watch, and it's like funny. It can be dramatic at times, and even in season 4, where they spent the majority of the season in these separate groups, I thought, at
2 minute
least
warning.
one of the groups. hey, we got time to fill. We're not even at an hour yet.
You were the one that said we're just going to give our votes, I think, too.
Well, we gotta make this dramatic. But some of those groups throughout season 4, the story was strong, and I liked seeing the characters interact in those groups. I thought the Mike and 11 thing sucked throughout the entire season. But since I'm getting
Mike.
peer pressured into just giving you my vote without any explanation,
You gave us plenty of explanation, dude.
I'm gonna have to give my vote to House of the Dragon.
Really?
So, with all that said, I do want to hear Jordan.
Okay. Well, I'll start off with Chad, I guess. I actually kind of stand against what they're saying. I think the comparisons to Game of Thrones were necessary. Game of Thrones had its issues, and some of the things that completely took me out of the Game of Thrones story, what bored me, where I was just kind of like ready to take a nap during an episode, House of the Dragons was able to add some more just context to it. We call it drama, whatever you want, incest, whatever you want. But I was able to pay attention to it a little bit more than I was with Game of Thrones. And so I think the comparison there is I appreciate the comparison because of that. The time jump was problematic for me and a few people that I know. I took a long break from the show. I came back to it. They did do a very fine job with it once you got used to it. But you were doing the companion series. It keeps you in it, right? Because you're doing the companion series. You got to keep it going. I lost interest at that point, and they did a fine job, and I'm glad it's where it's at. Going over to Stranger Things, I think I would disagree with a lot of the points. I think the characters did evolve a lot. Just instead of a 10-year time jump, you're literally just seeing a few years time jump, and you're watching them go from playful kids outdoors riding their bikes to some having interest in girls, some guys. You see evolution there. You see an evolution of love interest between the adults going back and forth. And I would say the complexity of taking, like, sure, it is, one major era, but it creates an amalgam of the sci-fi, of the horror, of the comedy, of the just everything above. It just does it with nods to the things that kept us or got us into pop culture as kids ourselves. Because the 80s, it gave birth to the Titans, Transformers, GI Joes. You got all these, major parts of comics, as we know, happened around that time, or just late 70s leading into the 80s. It's, I think everyone here can agree. I know, Chad, you could probably agree. Stranger Things is a freaking phenomenal show, and you can't even believe you made an argument against it that compelling, right?
Yeah.
Everything vice versa. But just the way it's presented, I would have to give it to Chad. But it's, I don't think I'll end it with this. Stranger Things season 1 was better.
Stranger Things season 1 was very, very strong for sure.
It was crazy. It's crazy good.
Um,
It's rare that I chain it, like I just blow right through a show. I watched them all the same night.
Yeah. So we have our first finalist hailing from Division Chad. House of the Dragon, the number 9 seed from HBO Max, has made it to the championship round. So yeah, good arguments, good cases on both sides. Thank you guys for participating, and it's over now. You guys get the comfort of judging the next round, which is the matchup everyone's been waiting for. Actually, I'm sure nobody's been waiting for.
Can I just shake Chad's hand? Good game.
Yes, the virtual shake.
GG, bro.
So,
There you go.
so
Yeah, you
awkward to do on
use
camera.
That's good.
All right. So Nick, are you able to pull some fancy camera work here and get us down onto the debate stage below?
Wow.
Who can be entrusted with the timer duty, or would you like me to do that myself?
I can do the timer.
Okay, I'll give you a minute there to get that ready, and I suppose I will introduce the matchup here, and then Nick, do you want to go first? Do you want me to go first? I'll be a gentleman and let you choose, but you can decide while I'm introducing. Setting the stage here, we have the finalist from Division Mike, the newcomer Arcane on Netflix. This is not actually our number 1 seed. This was the number 2 seed out of Division Mike. And it is going up against another HBO Max original
The actual
series
number 1
here.
seed.
The actual number 1 seed here, Chernobyl. So with that being said, Nick, would you like to go first, or would you like me to go first?
I can go first.
All
And
right.
can I just like take like 10 seconds of my 5 minutes? That's really all I need, right?
Okay. Nick. you
Okay,
have
hold
5
on. Before
minutes.
you do anything, the way that Chad's camera is with Jordan's, there's like I think maybe it's the microphone in Jordan's camera. It looks like an extension
it looks like my
of
arm.
your arm, dude. I
Holy
was like,
crap,
how
it
are you in
does.
Jordan's camera right now?
Holy crap, it does. That's
I was
wild.
so
Just sit slightly
confused there for a
lower, and
second.
yeah.
Yeah.
Holy
Yeah, it was
crap.
just, look at that. Perfect.
They're
Somebody-
actually in the same room. White
Yeah,
wall.
yeah.
blue
It
wall.
has like the same fold as my other one. Look at
Man.
this. Okay.
All right.
Nick,
that really
your
threw me.
5
That wood
minute
paneling
timer
too, Jordan. Wow.
starts.
Yeah.
Starts
It just should.
now.
All right. Yeah, this one's crazy. So yeah, Chernobyl. Clearly, we've talked about it for many rounds now. Fantastic show. It's made it farther than I think anyone really expected to, especially for a late edition swap out. Even like nearly didn't even make the tournament. So it's had an absolute fantastic run. this whole entire March Madness here at Showboys. Chernobyl does everything it set out to do to the highest degree, right, that it possibly could, with such a narrow focus on a real life event, right? Something that really happened, something that doesn't get a lot of time on television or in the light or talked about. Like it was all something we knew happened, know of, talk about. It's referenced all the time. Like everyone knows what the word Chernobyl is, or was, still is for sure. This show was maybe one of the first times like it really put a lens on it. Was like, this is really like what actually most likely happened to the best of our knowledge for a time where there weren't cameras there. Very few firsthand accounts for many reasons. And what they were able to take and turn it not just some drab documentary series, but like a docudrama series, and really kind of like flesh that out was absolutely incredible. And, you know, it was also one of those not like super hyped up things, but kind of like word of mouth, like this is an awesome show. Like it's one season, this many episodes, captivating from the start. Like it spends no time getting going. And you're like, how is something this narrow focus this awesome? And, you know, we hit it on the last round, like each category comes off very strong against many other shows that go up against it category for category. I think we swap out the music for more like the sound usage in the show, top notch, right? And we also get very good, I wouldn't say like the acting is obviously good, but it's easy to kind of dramatize like real life events sometimes, but depicting what the characters went through and like being there, like you could really imagine like how horrifying this thing is, that asterisks really happened, right? So that's just something that this show was phenomenal capturing. What's my time?
You're about at a 2-minute warning.
Ooh, nice. I can go for my second part now. Yeah, and I wish Jared Harris, right? Is that his name? That's his name.
Yeah,
We should
unnamed
really learn
character.
it someday.
Yeah.
It's gonna stick. It's gonna stick. So to me too, for the whole Jared Harris point, is that this is a character. He's one of those actors where it's like, I know him because he was in like 12 other shows I've watched, but has he ever been a main character? Yes and no. Depends on how deep you go down the Jared Harris trail. But this show, he's primary character, runs the whole thing, well acted, and it's really kind of like a really bright spot on his career, that he took this and made it, you know, he made it his own, right? And he demonstrated a lot of his acting capabilities in this, because he does sometimes tend to fall into that Jared Harris role, but this one really did it. And
1 minute warning.
thank you. And let's see here. Aesthetically wise, like this kind of goes back like them putting you in the moment, and at that time, it's just gritty, right? I would say it has like a generic filter over it that just makes it kind of gray and drab. But even I remember like before the Chernobyl thing happens, like it's not that way. Like they show like the trees and like the environment and nature around it, and then like it like night falls, the event all goes down, and it's all of a sudden this like the transition just in that first, like, I don't know, it's like first half of the first episode where it goes from like it's just like a nice day, and then it's absolute hellscape within a matter of hours, and then
10 seconds.
and then it ends with, you know, firefighters, fiery, ashy, graphite chunks falling from the sky, right? Like that's never fun.
Time's up.
That was a great ending, like right as time ended. Holy cow.
Mhm.
Practiced all day.
Okay, Jordan, do you have any questions?
No, I was like, it's not my turn. I don't know.
Jordan, go.
I guess I would say, you know, Chernobyl's it's not it's a pretty stressful show, right? Having these two shows that are just nothing alike one another. What would make you want to sit down to watch Chernobyl tonight over Arcane, knowing it's as stressful as it is?
Like having seen both shows already,
Yeah.
like a rewatch situation. Probably to like a good reason we watch the things we do is because we enjoy the ways they make them us feel. So if I want to be put and transported to a very stressful, dire situation, right? Like people watch horror movies not because like they want to be happy, because they want
Or
to
the
be
news,
scared.
whatever.
Or the news, right? Yeah, that's why a lot of people don't watch the news, unfortunately. But I mean, if you want to capture like that itch to scratch, like I need to watch something suspenseful, dreadful, and just full of despair, and also with the asterisks actually happened, it's going to scratch that for you, and it has rewatch capability. So yeah,
That's a good answer. And I would add one more thing that in like 10 seconds before like Chad's done talking every time, and Chad, oh my God, Nick's done talking every time. We need like a
Yeah.
like a reactor gonna blow.
Oh,
See,
that would
that
make this
would've-
debate much more intense.
it would have been nice if I came with like all that preparedness,
All that
and then it
prepped,
just
yeah.
make like everything my
Yeah.
entire bits like way
Lights-
better. Mike's
Lights
just like,
around you.
I need a sound. What do I do?
Yeah.
League of Legends soundboard, go.
You're right.
Dad.
Um,
Questions.
so you talked about Jared Harris. Were there any other characters based on their performance that really stood out to you, that like really set the show apart from others?
Yeah, this one, I always find that's a good question. I always find this tricky with like historical dramas, because they usually do have to focus on like here's the real life character we know the most about, and we can like make an actual dramatized story over him. So it's really hard to pull secondary characters into the light without making too much up. So for me personally, like there aren't a ton. Obviously when they hit like how the families were affected and like those that were actually in there, and like they pay tribute to them at the end, like they do focus on that. But I like how it tastefully didn't do that, and it kept all the real life people kind of in the context of them, like they are just ordinary people. We can't all just be, star stud Jared Harris doing his thing. So I would say not many stand out to me, but I think that to me that's tastefully purposeful for what they set out to do.
Yeah. Okay.
So I have a question. You had mentioned that not many shows or movies cover Chernobyl, which is true. Do you think the show itself stands out solely because of that, because it is covering a topic that's not widely covered? Or do you think if there was 4 other movies, 3 other shows, that it would stand above presumed other shows? Is that the draw for the series?
Man, that's a great question.
Yeah, I'm getting all the good questions. I
Man,
like
you
this.
guys are just nailing it with the questions.
Yeah, I thought me and Mike were the hosts. What the heck?
We should have been the judges.
Yeah.
You're down
You
there
guys
in the
got
pit
good
now, bro.
Yeah.
Yeah. How do you like it?
Yeah,
By the
exactly.
Pressure's on.
orb. Can you repeat your question? Okay, yeah. So if they were to make other shows like on the topic, would it stand above? I think so, because I think this is like exactly how to approach this event, this topic, right, as this historical dramatized series. Because what tends to happen though is like you can't just replicate this. I don't think you could replicate this style of this topic better than this show, right? So what you'd have to do is you would have to say, I'm going to really embellish the story. I'm going to really dramatize it and make it really like colorful green explosions and get really satirical with it. And have just like satirical Russians running around and, you know what I mean? Like really take you out of it and make it more blend it toward like fiction. Right. And I think that just immediately does disservice to it. So as far as like setting out to make a historical drama piece as close as you can to the actual story, but also not having too much tangible evidence, firsthand evidence to go on, but keeping it in context without people being like, well, that's just ridiculous. I know that didn't really happen. I know it's based on a true story. Almost to the point where it's like, this is a true story versus this is based on a true story.
Good answer. I agree. Okay. Anything else from the panel before we move on to Mike's argument? Nothing.
Nope.
Okay. Mike, you are on the clock. 5 minutes, sir. Your
All
5
right.
minutes starts now.
All right, first off, just want to say, hard to argue against anything Nick said. Chernobyl's a great show. He made a great case for it. I do just want to start out here. Just a few reviews, a few little stats here. So, Arcane, it won 17 awards, by the way. Notably, it won 4 Emmys and 1 award from the Video Game Awards. So it's not like they did win a bunch of random awards, but the Emmys, that's kind of a big deal. And on top of that, it was nominated 6 other times, including on the Billboard Award show for its music, which is great. And I just wanted to read a few reviews here, and then I'll get into my case. So, quote, classic in the making and the nail in the coffin of the so-called video game curse. On the topic of fans of League of Legends versus newcomers to the world of League. The character stories are what keep you engaged episode after episode. The lore is just the icing on the cake. Regarding the animation, most stunning piece of animation since Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, and just a nice overall review that encapsulates the whole thing. Delivers a killing blow to the idea that video games cannot be masterfully adapted. With compelling characters, an endearing story, and fascinating lore and world building, as well as striking visuals, this is a once-in-a-generation masterpiece. So again, just reading some reviews, but I really wanted to hone in on the category of world building. Of course, I'm coming from the perspective of a fan of League of Legends, talking to a bunch of people who have never played. Maybe Jordan has dabbled. But the way they build out this world and flesh it out is just phenomenal. And I think it lands both on League fans, especially, but also those who are new to the game universe and lore. So the story takes place in 2 primary regions within Runeterra, which is the world of League of Legends. There is a total of 13 regions existing in Runeterra. So just keep that in mind. I'm going to read a few quotes from League's website describing these zones that this takes place in. So first we have Piltover, which is one of the main spots. This is what League's website says. Thriving progressive city whose power and influence is on the rise. Valoran's cultural center, situated on the cliffs above Zaun and overlooking the ocean, with even more inventors delving into the emergent lore of Hextech. Piltover has become a lodestone for the most skilled craftsmen the world over. And you take those few sentences and look at what they translated from that into the visuals, into the characters, and the overall tone and vibe of Piltover in the moments that we spend inside Piltover. It's like almost a direct translation here. All those things are visually present.
2-minute warning.
Then you look at Zaun. It's large undercity district lying in the deep canyons. Zaun and Piltover were once united, but now they're separate. Zaun is a dark mirror of Piltover above. Crazy inventors escaping to Zaun to escape regulations and restrictions leads to mass pollution and reckless industry and technologies. And again, you see that translated almost perfectly on screen. And the thing that's crazy about the world building they're establishing here, you're taking 3 of the 14 characters from Zaun and telling a story. You're taking 4 of the 8 Piltover characters from the game and telling a story, leaving over half of the characters just in these zones alone to tell stories for. And not only that, remember, there's 13 total regions in Runeterra, all of varying aesthetics, lores, cultures, like totally different stories that can be told outside of what we're getting in Arcane and Piltover and Zaun that are just waiting there to be dove into. They are setting up a massive world to tell fantastic stories like we've seen in Arcane with Vi and Jinx, which, by the way, two of the most iconic characters in League of Legends as a whole, and the way they're able to translate their look and feel and
30
personality
seconds.
from in game as you play them, along with what's written in the lore on their website, they did such an amazing job bringing these characters to life in a way that makes them impossible to take your eyes off the screen. What a bad time to get a dry spot and start coughing.
10 seconds.
But I think I served my purpose there in that first 5 minutes.
Okay, time's up. Okay, well done, Mike.
That was
Jordan.
amazing. That was amazing. The ending was so good.
I tried so hard not to bust out in coughing fits.
So good.
That was actually choking, but whatever.
Jordan, you have a question?
Let's add some context here. It's kind of funny. Mike's like, there's 12 beautiful, thriving regions instead of this one tiny one that is now radioactively destroyed.
Yeah.
Hey, I
was
still
like,
got my rebuttal round, so hey.
I really wouldn't say there's any questions.
Okay,
yeah.
Dad, anything?
Go back.
All I want to say is Chernobyl won some awards too.
Oh, we'll get to that.
Okay.
No questions.
Okay, so no questions? I do have a question for you, Mike,
Yeah, sure.
because you said a lot of fancy words in there
You sure did.
that are fairly meaningless to me as a non-League of Legends player. What do you think is the strongest piece of Arcane that would draw me in as a non-League of Legends player?
The animation is probably the most appealing thing right off the bat to a non-League of Legends fan. You take a look at any of the clips, the trailers, even the thumbnail arts like that you see on the side of the screen right now. Visually, this show stands apart, I think, by a very wide margin from most other animated projects. And I agree with the one review I said or quoted. Other than Into the Spider-Verse, which I think Arcane could even go toe to toe if you wanted to get into that argument between which animation was better, Arcane or Into the Spider-Verse, you're not going to get anything better. And as you're sucked in by the visuals, then they catch you hook, line, and sinker with the engaging story that's told between the characters. And then on top of that, you just look around at these scenes and you see this massive world of Zaun and Piltover, and you're just like sucked in, and you're curious, and you want more. You want to know, like, what's the deal with this dive bar that they hang out in? Like, who's that shady character in the corner? What's up with these guards from Piltover? I'll end there because I don't want to spend 10 minutes in a free debate round. But nobody else answered questions.
Yeah,
so
nobody
I
answered.
I could go
Yeah.
a little longer on yours, but I don't know. Hopefully that answered your question.
It does. It does. Okay, Nick. It is rebuttal time for you, sir.
Rebuttal time.
2-minute clock, and your clock is going to start right now.
Yeah, totally. So Michael, so I do echo Chad that a lot of your argument was based on kind of like description of a place and thing that many people don't really know much about. So I'll call that the Warcraft effect. Definitely it falls into that bucket. How many primetime Emmy awards did Arcane win? What was that? What was that?
4.
note there?
4.
Oh, okay. Chernobyl was nominated for 19, won 10. Overall 80 wins across all award categories. So there's that. What else could I go on about here? So yeah, I do agree that the animation in Arcane is pretty up there. Like I believe I even quoted myself like giving it like a top 3 when I first watched it, right? Top 3, top 5. But you know, this, capturing again how this is something very unfamiliar, right? Like what is the importance, what is the impact that has on just like a general audience? Chernobyl captures like this real thing that everyone on the planet knows about. And if you tell them like, hey, I can transport you to this pretty significant point in human history,
30 seconds.
or I can transport you to Runeterra, they're like, huh? Right. So it kind of has that drawdown on it. And I don't know who these reviews are you're quoting. Are they just like
They're actually just
tweets on
me.
the internet?
They're just you.
What he wrote.
This
They
isn't the
were-
6 o'clock news. We're not
they were all
citing
him.
tweets from Jordan's Twitter account as evidence.
Time's up. Okay, Nick coming in hot, coming in very hot. Jordan, no, Dad. Let's start with Dad this time. Let's
Yeah,
start with Jordan
Dad.
all the time.
Okay.
Let's start with Dad.
I had a question. I really did, and it just totally went out of my brain. Can you come back to me by chance?
Yes, I can.
Oh
Jordan,
my
do you have any questions, sir?
Well, I'll tell you what. Do you have any questions, Chad? You can go first.
Kick, punt.
Oh man, Joe's got a point there.
You don't, do you?
I don't know that I have a question. I do want to just give you props for your award bomb that you dropped on us, because
That was quick. Did you?
he was
did you
coming in.
Google
He
that,
was coming
like,
in
on the
hot with
spot?
the awards that he won, and you dropped him by more than doubling the awards. Might I add?
Yeah. The move there was that Mike had a lot of context from like internet sources. So I was like, I'll bring some of that. I didn't bring in any of that, but I'll bring some of that to match in my rebuttal. Good rebuttal content. So
That was
Very
that
good.
Was
Very good
Great
rebuttal.
point.
Okay, are we striking out on the questions here? Anybody? Does anybody?
they
have a
were so
question?
good the first round, guys.
I know,
I
and then I
know.
got nothing.
We used up all our good
That's
ones
'cause I-
on Nick.
I didn't know what to ask you
Just
because I
read-
didn't know anything that you were talking about.
Oh yeah. Just repeat the same questions you gave me to Mike. Like, Dad, your question about like secondary characters, like things like that.
Okay.
Or is there a primary character that
Okay.
even like stands out?
Okay. So
You're welcome.
as far as the characters go, Mike, do you feel like
Hey, well, I haven't.
wait,
no.
hang on,
This
hang on.
is Nick.
This is
I
Nick.
haven't even gone my second round yet, so
Oh,
all the
gotcha.
questions are targeted to Nick right now.
sorry.
All right, all right.
Sorry.
We're putting him on. We're putting him on the clock. 'cause
No
he's over there.
questions.
Yeah,
No
no
question.
questions.
Here,
Question
shut up,
time
it's
is
fine.
over.
No further questions.
Mike, 2-minute clock for your rebuttal.
All right.
Quit.
For your
I'm ready.
rebuttal, and you got some catching up to do. I'm not going to lie to you. Starts now.
that's
2
fair.
minutes. Starts now.
All right. Valid points on the awards. I will counter with how many animated shows besides like The Simpsons, are popping out Emmys and stuff. That aside, I'll get out of the world building mud and I'll just talk about the story. It's a very engaging story of two like sisters coming of age and growing apart and overcoming hardship and oppression in a town that provides them really no opportunities. They're stuck with a life of crime, and we have Haley Steinfeld, who voices Vi, great voice actress. We also have Ava Sorolla from The Expanse. If you're a fan of The Expanse, she plays a character named Grayson. But I will say, building onto the characters and their growth throughout the 9 episodes we have, it's again, I just tie it to the little lore that's available on Riot's website about these characters and how they were just able to breathe life into these things, from just making the combat awesome to watch between these characters, to the dialogue between these
30
characters
seconds.
being striking and engaging, and just the story is so fascinating. You have the Hextech magic technology that's building Piltover into this powerhouse of a region, and you have this sleazy scumbag from Zon kind of throwing a wrench in that and trying to steal this technology, and then you have the abandonment of Powder / Jinx and turning
Your
into
time
a villain,
is
and
up,
her
sir.
sister trying to stop her. It's just
Stop!
so
Stop!
engaging.
Order! Order on the floor!
of the court.
Stop!
Can I answer the question he raised though? Is that part? Isn't
No.
that like in like political debates? Like he raised the question to me. I have to respond.
Okay.
And we have Reddy's
What was
comment
the-
here. This is hard to just ignore. Chernobyl actually won 73,000 awards in the past 9 days, so I guess I'm going home.
Bots voting.
I will give you a brief moment of time to rebut his question that I don't remember, but please, Nick, rebut it.
So his question was like, how many other like animated shows do you know?
yes.
Right. So basically, you can name off anyone's favorite animated shows. They have won an award because the category is so low in competition. It's not that hard to win awards in the animation circle. So Clone Wars, South Park, you name it. Samurai Jack has even won stuff.
And how many episodes have those shows had to win those awards? I
Um,
bet it's probably
Clone-
more than 9.
Clone Wars, just based on one season, first season, got an award right there off the
Dang, Mike, man, you should maybe just keep quiet during this round. All right, Dad,
Rick and Morty.
Dad, we're gonna start with you this time, and I really hope you have a question.
Yeah, I hope you guys have questions too. I'm just sitting here like, wow, okay. I'm glad I asked questions.
So, do you think that the creators of Arcane created more intriguing characters based on the little information they had versus real life events that happened, these characters living in this terrible time where they're all melting?
Yes. And I think that's this isn't going to help me, but I gotta speak the truth. Chernobyl's not a character driven story. Like, that show is not, the characters essentially don't matter. It's all focused on the event and the handling of the event. Whereas Arcane is a character driven story. Everything revolves around this relationship between Vi and Powder and how they grew apart and what that did to Powder by the end of the season. The characters are one of the strengths of Arcane, whereas Chernobyl, you could have really any character in that show, and it really wouldn't change much.
Okay.
Jordan, do you have a question?
I had a couple things going through my head. I suppose I would. It's kind of flipping what I'd said to Chad. Like what would possess you to watch this over the other one? But if you were sitting with a group of you, what?
My name's Nick.
Oh my gosh, why do I keep doing that?
That is
Now
like
I
the
understand
second
what you're
time,
saying.
yeah.
I was like, what did you say to
Yeah.
Chad?
Yeah.
I apologize. And I literally said it to Nick. But anyway, flipping it around, the whole idea of if you're with a group of people and you say to yourself, what do you guys want to watch? And you narrow it down to these two shows. I don't want to like cloud up your final argument or anything, but like, what would spin you in a way to kind of convince them to go with this tone over the other tone, as they are very opposite?
Arcane's actually fun to watch, and if I'm in a group setting, I'd prefer us not to just all be weeping on each other's shoulders,
Depressed.
and just questioning life. I'd rather have a fun time. That's what Arcane brings.
I say that mainly because it's you kind of have a show about tragedy, and you have a show that's like kind of like life
More
of crime, and a dreary setting where it's
Yeah.
hard to get ahead, especially as a progressive
While
liberal in a failing
the-
state with blue hair.
right. The story is a little sad in Arcane, but the way it's delivered is exciting and fun. It's there's awesome combat, awesome visuals, bright colors. In Chernobyl, you're just watching people melt and the government deny anything is actually wrong and happening, and then having to live knowing, oh wow, that actually happened, and a bunch of people died and had miserable lives because of gross, inept leadership and malfunctioning of systems and processes. So if I was with a group of people, I'd just be like, we should probably watch Arcane because I don't want to send everyone into crippling depression.
And if I had to guess, with League of Legends, your particular favorite characters aren't in this show, right? That you play in League of Legends.
Favorite characters, no, but I did play Vi for a very long period of time, and let me tell you, seeing her translated on screen, it captured that very essence, that fantasy that you get when you play as Vi in the game. You get that same vibe and tone when you're watching her in this show. Like, you get to see, again, this is probably only going to matter a lot to players of the game, but they use moves that they have in the game in combat in the show, and when you see that, it's just like they did the thing. It's that Leo meme. That's the thing. Right. She just did her ultimate. That's awesome.
Right. And then you would, I guess, what realm would you hope that the sequel would be on, or they would intertwine with?
Well, there's still a lot of story to tell in Arcane with Vi and Jinx here. But if I had to pick a region for another spin-off, another story inside of Runeterra, I think a story involving Demacia and wherever Darius is from, two rival kingdoms.
The high fantasy style.
Yeah, like one's a warring nation that conquers and rules by power. The other one's like a high society who also is super racist against like mages, and just like they're always down each other's throats. There's just a lot of cool potential there. A lot of big characters that have a lot of story to tell for sure.
Sounds like Darius would hate Arcane. But I can see Darius being a figure in the future of the shows. He's kind of like the Captain America or the Space Marine, I guess, the 40K Space Marine of this universe, right?
Yeah, I could see that.
Cool.
Appreciate the questions this time, guys.
No problem.
So I want to know that if you think not knowing anything about League of Legends, not knowing about the supers that you're talking about, not knowing about the regions that you're talking about, not knowing about the characters that you're talking about, does that sway me to watch this over something that most people have pretty much heard about and knows what's going on with Chernobyl? What is minus the show just being fun, because not everybody's looking for fun in their shows. You know, we have a lot of serious shows that do very, very well.
Yeah, that's fair.
What besides the fun and the video game aspect of it is drawing non-video game players to come watch Arcane?
Just touching on the video game aspect of it, as a fan of games in general, this show should grab your attention because it is one of the only good adaptations. That aside, what would draw you to this an unknown world and story over Chernobyl? One, I would say the potential, even though a lot of the stuff I said in round one may have been foreign to non-League of Legends players, that should excite you because there is an unlimited amount of stories that can be told inside this world. And I say this is a very hard argument for me because I loved Chernobyl. So I'm like fighting against a show that I really, really enjoyed. But it's only 5 episodes and it's over and it's done. Like, and it's so hyper focused on the subject at hand that it doesn't have that world building factor that Arcane does, that opens up one, the story that's being told as the main point, but then like future spin-offs, future characters from other regions coming in and making cameos or being important players in these stories. That should excite somebody, regardless of whether or not you're a League of Legends player or not.
Okay. Any questions? Any more questions from the panel? Okay. Our final minute. Closing arguments start now. And Nick, you are up first, and your time is going to start now.
Thank you so much, Chad. So to quote Mike from an earlier part of this tournament, I believe he showed a lot of enthusiasm for the melting bodies in Chernobyl. So I would call that Mike thought it was fun to watch. He's oddball like that. Here's a new point. Honestly, though, like Arcane, for as great as it is, Warcraft effect kind of taking place, but on a bigger scale. Animation purely is going to have a fall off on a large part of the general population. Honestly, there's just people that they're not going to care at all or get into it at all because it's simply animation. They can't get past that blocker. Whereas no one's like, I can't watch real life like people in TVs. Like that would be odd if there probably is someone. To quote Mike again, though, it is 5 episodes. It's over. It's done. So in my perspective, Chernobyl in 5 episodes embeds this important part about the human condition briefly that everyone should just watch, bury in their brain. Now they know a lot more about something that actually happened. Finish that and go watch Arcane.
Okay. Wow, that minute went by fast.
It goes by real fast. Okay. Questions from our panel.
Do you feel like Chernobyl does a better job with the limited amount of time that they took to tell their story? Do you think they did a better job with that than Arcane did and could do in the future?
That's definitely a challenging question because Chernobyl, I think, it was very tasteful and appropriate that they only did 5 episodes because the same thing about like they did not overextend their stay on something and make it not what it was about all of a sudden. Because they could have added a ton of characters and a ton of exposition on all kinds of context, but like, no, we're going to tell this part of the story, and that's all we need to do in and out. So I would say in terms of like time value for your time, right? Investment, all that, watch Chernobyl because you're going to watch it, learn something, be more aware about something, and then be done with it. It's not a huge time investment, and what you get out of it is guaranteed much more effective because I can send you all off to go watch Chernobyl, then I'll be like, then go watch Arcane, right? If you want the next thing. But I'm pretty sure half of the people will just be like, oh, is that an animated thing? Never mind.
Valid. Okay. Jordan?
No, I don't think I have any questions.
Okay. I do have a question. Assuming, how do I want to word this? Which show out of these two, Nick, do you think did a better job with the limited information? It's kind of a little bit what Dad said, but which one did a better job with the limited information they had about either the no lore in Arcane or the very little information that we had firsthand account wise on Chernobyl? not knowing either of those, presumably when you watch both of these shows, which one do you think did a better job fleshing out the limited information?
Flushing out. I see what you did there.
Oh man, so radioactive on this one, and I really like how like at first entry to this debate, it's like, oh man, these shows are so different, but like, are they though? Right?
Yeah,
So
they've got quite a few similarities.
I thought about that when I was making the limited context thing. I was like, well, technically, that same point can be made about Arcane.
Mhm.
So
Very hard to argue.
yeah, and that's again a tough question, like Dad's in that same vein, because I think the limited, think about Chernobyl is like they take that limited amount of information, turn it into something believable, real, and like hopefully very contextually accurate to like what happened, without taking you out of it, right? So they could embellish a lot of things and taking you out of it quickly. But not that you have I didn't have any evidence to be like, that's not what happened. I have some countering evidence.
Yeah.
But then with Arcane, like Mike has said before, like they just have these like abstracts on the website. Like this is the abstract about the character, and here's like, was it 3 entire like 3 episode arcs for like a different set of characters, and let's just like completely flesh this all out. Honestly, I would have to say probably definitely Arcane like does a better job with what they're given, right? Whereas Chernobyl's so present in everyone's minds, like there's a lot of just fill in the blank that we just naturally have as being in the same reality that occurred versus Arcane. For like Chad, for you, if you were to go watch Arcane, you would learn a lot about the world of Runeterra in the short time it had there. So
Okay. All right. We good on questions, panel?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Mike, closing arguments. 1 minute on the clock, and your minute
All right.
starts now.
All right. Yeah. So I would bust out for my closing argument the cultural impact of Arcane versus Chernobyl. What I think Arcane has done for animated shows, which Nick's been on the record as saying this is like top 5, maybe top 3 animated shows in existence right now. What it has done already for the animated style, video game adaptations, and stories you can tell via animation, I think in comparison to what Chernobyl has done in a drama limited series, isn't really comparable. Chernobyl, while based on true events, is a fantastic dramatic series based on true events, whereas Arcane could arguably be the greatest video game adaptation to date, which then just
Time is
opens
up.
the door to change that genre.
Goes by
including
quick.
animation. I
That
know.
was super
Yes.
quick.
That's
Man.
That's
He's like, Mikey, begin 30 seconds.
Yeah. And your minute starts now and ends also now.
And it's gone.
Okay. Dad, final remarks or questions for Mike?
Do you feel like Arcane has, put raised the bar for other would-be animated shows? Yeah, I'll leave it there.
In terms of animated shows across the board, I would say maybe with the art style. But I would say what it does in terms of video game adaptations, utilizing a realm and a genre that really outside of maybe like Castlevania, there may be a few other handfuls out there, but you don't see game adaptations come in an animated style. What this does is open up the door for a vast swath of future game adaptations via animation instead of live action, which in turn I think just dramatically improves the quality of what you're able to tell game story wise in animation versus trying to like shoehorn crappy CGI into live action. I don't know if that exactly answers your question, but that's my answer.
Good.
Jordan.
I guess that kind of goes through with mine. I'm pretty good on questions here too, honestly.
Okay, I do want to touch on your animated video game thing because I have a hard time thinking that Arcane moves the animated series forward when there's a lot that the anime community has been doing for 20 years. It's really not that radically different from what you're seeing in Arcane, especially nowadays. But what you said that there's not a lot of animated video game adaptations, correct? There are quite a few, and I think that I think a lot of them might stand up to Arcane, especially Castlevania. I think the Resident Evil animated movies are phenomenal if you haven't seen those. So what stands this above all of the other animated stuff out there, video game wise or not?
Good question. Well, I would say first that it stands out above the others mainly because I haven't heard of any of the others outside of Castlevania. And Arcane was in the zeitgeist when in 2021 when it released. It was all over Twitter. It was all over social media. It was largely talked about because League of Legends is one of the biggest video games in the world. I love Resident Evil. I'm a huge fan of Resident Evil. I didn't even know there was animated anything in terms of Resident Evil. The only reason I know Castlevania exists is because it's also on Netflix. But what it does is it allows, like kind of I touched on a little bit with Dad, it allows you to translate a game narrative into a show format visually in ways that you can't do that in live action because you're worried about how are we going to do that with CGI. Also, I got to pay Tom Holland and Mark Wahlberg like $1 zillion to be Nathan Drake and Sully. How am I going to pull off this crazy scene where they're flying out of an airplane? Whereas you can take all these different cultures and regions of a game like League of Legends, and I would love for Blizzard to see what Riot did here and apply this to Warcraft in any way. Like you can take orcs and night elves and not worry about crappy CGI or people in prosthetics and tell these fantastic stories in these settings that gamers have lived in for years. And that just translates better in an animated style than it would in live action. I don't know if that exactly answers your question. I hope that it answered at least some of it.
It did.
Okay.
It did.
I have another question.
Sorry,
Michael?
my chair keeps like auto syncing. I think I need a new computer chair.
It's the weight. It's the weight of that Chernobyl on your shoulders, brother.
Yeah, exactly.
Go ahead, Dad.
Do you think that Arcane would be as big and as popular as it is without League of Legends?
Ooh.
I mean, we've already touched on in this debate that it's already starting a few rungs down the ladder due to being animated. And of course, being associated with League of Legends helps immensely, right? Because you already have a huge fan base from the game. But yeah, I would say I have to tell the truth here. I have to be objective. I think if League of Legends was not the content of Arcane, it probably wouldn't be as big as it was initially. But I also think that's kind of an unfair question because the same could be asked to Nick. If Chernobyl was not the subject matter of Chernobyl, would it be as good as it is? You're basically asking me if the
no, I
story you're
think that's a little
telling.
different.
Well, no, it's not different because League
Well,
of
I think
Legends
it goes
is the
both ways,
story that
honestly.
they're telling, right? They're telling characters from League of Legends. So if League of Legends isn't involved, then you
Warcraft
don't have the
effect.
characters. If
It goes both ways,
take,
honestly.
if you
Well-
take
well-
Chernobyl and the real life events of Chernobyl out of Chernobyl, then what story are you telling? You're removing the
Stop
basis
taking
of
Yeah,
the
but
story.
that's not
Stop digging.
Jordan, go ahead, because you might just touch on my point if you don't.
Well,
I will.
it kind of stops from getting there more so because I'm saying people watch it because it is related to League of Legends, but
Yeah.
a lot of people have a distaste for League of Legends.
That's also
some
true.
of it was the first,
That's
some
also
of it was
true.
one of the first MOBAs they played, and the toxic environment or the overly competitive scene of it, just even in its casual, turned a lot of people away. So I don't know. I could see that point going both ways,
Yeah.
as a plus and a minus.
I can too because I didn't play League of Legends, but I liked Arcane.
Oh, that's a good example right there. Then
But yes, to Jordan's point, the League community is the absolute worst, conglomerate of human
Toxic
beings on the planet.
toxicity, yeah,
Honestly, they're so toxic that probably most of them did not watch Arcane because they could care less.
right? Because they couldn't say things to the other person,
Yeah,
Well, because
exactly.
they couldn't get off of League of Legends.
right?
Okay.
Hey,
Voting
thanks
time,
guys
Julia.
for the questions. Those were, I
Yeah.
mean, across the board between the Nick and I, you guys asked some hard to answer questions for sure.
Yeah, it sucks. I like being on this side of but
I do
but
too.
Unfortunately, I won the last round, so I won't be next time. Okay, we are going to start
Guess we should do this more often.
the voting with Dad.
Okay.
Sorry, bud. You're just up there. You're just
that's-
you're number
that's
one.
fine.
You're in the number one seat.
I understand. Okay. Man. I feel like you guys did a good job at making your case. However, I feel more compelled by Nick in his
Hey,
debate.
hey, keep your mouth shut down there, Michael.
Do I-
Your time is done.
I'm sorry, Mike. I did enjoy Arcane, but Nick's delivery sold me, and I will probably go watch Chernobyl and cry tonight. Thank you for that.
Nice.
Now you're the douche. My vote
Okay,
for Nick.
that is one vote for Chernobyl. I'm trying to decide if I want to let Jordan go. I think I want to let Jordan go. Do you want to go, Jordan? Let's go, Jordan.
Let's
That
go.
was a good-
Let's go, Jordan.
Oh, all of a sudden the rules don't matter anymore. How
Chad's
up
in
here, I
charge.
read
We
it-
can't
I read
do
it.
much down
Yeah.
here.
Yeah, we can't do
Um,
anything.
Mike and I are powerless now. This is Chad Boys.
So, couple of things.
I like it.
I think the award thing is, if we measured this by awards, we would know the outcome of every argument before we even have the conversation.
Mike brought him up.
I know.
Hey, you shush. I got scolded for talking.
Hey,
you shut your mouth.
You two need to stop talking.
It was good too. It was a good rebuttal though. So that's what I was going to get to. It's funny. Going into the idea that Arcane's obviously League of Legends itself. It is. I've had this argument with other people where you may not even care about the core story or the IP itself, but you can't deny cultural phenomenons. It's definitely a staple in the gaming community and just the MOBA genre in general. So it needs to it should stand on its own with that. It at least makes you pay close attention to it off the get-go. I know that's what brought me into it, even not being a fan of the game. I would definitely say also, in counter to Chernobyl, having historical episodes or movies, whatever you want to call it, they're just two completely different things, and it's to even sit here and make the case of these two different TV shows is it's. I know that you guys say there's a lot of similarities, but I think it's crazy. We're sitting there even divulging this deep into them, but again, I base it on the arguments given, and what makes me want to watch one in particular. I would have just, I'm a big history buff. I love history. I think there's a lot of one of my favorite things is learn a lot about history so you don't repeat it. Obviously, Russia has a lot to learn with a lot of things, but I think with this argument, somehow Mike has convinced me to go watch a blue-haired chick in a crazy progressive town do crazy things, and I gotta give it to Mike so far.
That was
quite the roller coaster.
Because
that was
I
quite
was
that was one hell of a
I was
roller
like,
coaster.
all right,
I'm
well,
so
I
glad I
lost,
let you go.
and then you're
Yeah.
like, well, actually,
Yeah,
But-
what a
not-
hell of a roller coaster that was. So
Holy
glad I
cow.
went to you next. Okay, so we're one for one here.
Oh boy.
So trying to remove my own selfish reasons for knocking Nick off so I don't have to go up against him next week. Mike, I think you started, I like the way you started your arguments out, pulling out the quotes, pulling out the awards. Unfortunately, I think they kind of got swamped over by the rebuttal. I don't know that you made the strongest case for non-league players to go and watch the series. Full disclosure, I actually really enjoy the series. I know nothing about League of Legends. Literally didn't know any of the words that you were talking about, and I've watched this. So, so that being said, I do really enjoy it. I love seeing that we have an animated series in the Final Four. I think that's really, really cool. As a big anime fan, I don't think animated stuff kind of gets its I don't know what I'm going for here. It's
Credit.
props.
it's credit.
I feel like he's
On the other
doing that
side,
so he can
Chernobyl-
smash me down here.
On the other side, Chernobyl, I think Chernobyl has a stronger case for someone who knows nothing about either of these shows to go and watch it. Obviously, it's got the historical aspect to it, watching something that actually happened, and a kind of mysterious thing that kind of happened too as well. There's not a lot known about it or talked about, at least. So whether the show was played up for dramatic reasons or not, that I can't exactly speak to that. I think they did a phenomenal job in 5 episodes telling the story, which is pretty short for a series. Very short for a series. But that's kind of what we always talk about on here, where they know the ending, right? And they're going to get to there in the amount of time it takes them to get there, and they're not going to stretch it out. And I appreciate that Chernobyl did that. But I do have to break a tie, unfortunately.
The suspense
And-
is killing me.
And I do have to unfortunately side with Nick on the argument. I think Chernobyl is a stronger show when compared to this one. Not to say that Arcane is not strong, and I'm super proud for Arcane making it as far as it did. Arcane will always have a special spot in my heart because it knocked off The Chosen. So it's sad that I have to let that one go, but I think Chernobyl is just the better overall show objectively. Which kind of sucks for me because now I got to argue with Nick tomorrow, and I'm just not good at arguing. He is good. He's like second place to Jordan on the panel as far as arguing goes. So it's not gonna be a good time.
Yeah.
And now I've
I'm
stung.
so mad that
I'm-
I made
I'm glad
this
it's not
work.
me.
Oh my god.
But here's the problem. I've stung 2 people here now. Like I beat Dad tonight. I crushed Mike's hopes and dreams probably. So I'm screwed. I'm screwed for next week.
No, I
Nowhere to go but down, huh?
I think those are all fair votes. I think for both rounds, honestly. I do think the two best shows probably made it through. This one was particularly hard for me because I do really enjoy Chernobyl. Like it's a very great show. And I want to think that it probably was difficult for Nick, being a fan of Arcane, or at least what he's said in the past about what he feels about Arcane. So I don't know. Was this a tough one for you to work your way through? Maybe not. Maybe not debate wise, but like trying to make a case against a show that you really like.
Yeah, so I actually honestly like put zero thought into this, like up into the moment like it started happening, which in case I then basically black out and then next thing I know, Chad's like, "Oh, you win." I'm like, wow, why did I do that? So yeah, I have no idea. I think mostly it was just kind of just one making a good opening case, but then somehow like you just set me up to dismantle on the rebuttal.
Yeah. You got to take advantage of the rebuttal. You got
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, and but the whole time I'm like, one, I'm with Chad. I would rather be up there in the final.
Yeah.
And
I definitely
also,
like being up there.
I probably like right next to you, Mike, wanted to see Arcane like win it all, if at all possible. So that was why I just blacked out, and I was just like, nope, I can't even think about that show.
I don't
Like,
want
that
this
show.
to remain in
can't
my
do it.
That show.
memory.
That
Need
show's
to
dead
make
to
my
me.
valid arguments. Show's dead to me.
I'm like the only person who likes being in the pit, I guess.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
do, man. It's rough down there.
We'll just
Well,
have
no.
So,
Jordan
I
debate
hate it.
himself next week.
Yeah.
And we're
Listen,
all
you
the
son
four
of
of
a
us are
bitch.
judges.
I like being down here. It's just I don't want to be here next week.
Right.
That makes
Right.
sense.
Yeah, me either. Yeah.
How
Like I
how
was
did,
excited that I won, but I was like, fuck.
Oh crap.
Hey,
Yeah.
real quick, I wanted to say, comparing Arcane to Into the Spider-Verse, I have to say, Into the Spider-Verse, that's like a pillar in animation
Oh yeah.
So good.
that changed the game.
Yeah.
It's
And I don't know if you saw, but there is a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle movie coming out that has damn near identical animation going on for it. It's
and
very
that's
close.
that's a testament.
That's
towards it, right?
exciting.
Yeah.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
Honestly, it was probably Into the Spider-Verse that kind of paved the way for Arcane to be as widely accepted as it was.
Dude, yeah, some of those animation time, like if you look up the animation, there was like something where it took them like 2 months to animate like 3 seconds Into the Spider-Verse. It's like,
Yeah.
dude, what are you doing
That-
for 3 months on
that's
3 seconds of
crazy.
footage?
But so let's turn this back up to Dad and Chad. Like, how did you guys feel that your matchup went?
I'm glad I'm not in the finals.
Yeah.
Good luck, Chad.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I was gonna be happy either way because I was gonna be happy that House of the Dragon made it to the finals, or I was gonna be happy that I could just sit here and chill and listen to your guys' arguments and pick them apart. But that's not how it panned out. I think ours went pretty good. I think we both made pretty valid arguments on both sides.
Well, like what Mike said, it's hard to make a case against the show that you like. And I liked House of the Dragon,
Yeah.
and I just had to fight for Stranger Things.
Yeah, and I mean, I was really kind of the same way with Stranger Things. I love Stranger Things, so it was hard to detach, like just put that show in the dead to me category, like
it's
Nick did to
hard.
Arcane.
But you did
I
it.
do want to say that I feel kind of on Jordan's side with I felt like the Game of Thrones references were kind of needed in some aspects of my argument. So
My point there was they're not necessary, but they are really powerful. But like
Yeah.
you could make the argument without it. 'Cause
Yeah.
Stranger Things is that weak.
What about you guys? How do you feel yours panned out?
Yeah, I mean, I am happy either way. because I think both shows deserve to be in the finals. Honestly, I guess I'm not shocked that Arcane made it, but I also like kind of am because it's the only animated show. Well, not the only animated show in the tournament, but one of
Only one that made it past
maybe
round
2 animated shows or 3 animated shows in the tournament. But it was cool that it made it this far, and hopefully if any of our listeners maybe haven't seen Arcane, then maybe they'll want to check it out. I think that's the cool thing about
yeah.
the tournament as a
Exposure.
whole up to this point. And I mean, if somebody hasn't seen House of the Dragon or Chernobyl, that would be like, are you living under a rock? But some of the shows earlier on in the tournament, it's like, you know, maybe people will check some of these shows out and enjoy some good stuff that they maybe have been sleeping on or haven't even heard of. But yeah, I'm okay with the outcome.
What about you, Nick?
Yeah, that's why I ended my entire argument with watch Chernobyl, then go watch Arcane. That's really the only way to get through that. Yeah, I just can't believe Arcane lost. I think I'm more surprised Chernobyl was a swap like week of.
Replacement show.
Dude, wild. Yeah.
Now it's in
Made
the
it all the way to
finals.
the finals. Yeah.
I think that's just like the most astounding part. And for something I think maybe, what did Chernobyl go up against last round?
The Expanse.
The Expanse, yeah.
Yeah, so I think from like I think it kind of somewhat at least shows a little bit of at least attempt to remove like our biases, because I think by default, like, I mean, I know at the beginning I was like, dude, I'm gonna push Expanse like all the way to like as far as it could possibly go, but somehow it got snuffed out by the late swap.
I was
5 episode miniseries.
Powerhouse.
Yeah. Jordan, do you have any closing remarks here before we wrap up?
Some of the questions towards you, Mike, when I was drawing a blank, just in my grand scheme of immaturity, I was like trying not to do it, but I was gonna be like Mike, in comparison to Chernobyl, what would you consider Arcane as fake? like it popped in my head like 2 different times. I had nothing happening afterwards. And, I just needed to voice it.
Oh my gosh, you're ridiculous. I will say, glad that old Gene Harris is in the finals. I mean, he was.
We'll never forget that name.
Yeah.
Different name every time.
I will say when Chad was like, when I asked him, I was like, where am I at time wise? He was like 2 minutes. I'm like, all right, I need to make something up for 2 minutes.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I was like, I'm just gonna go with Jared Harris the whole time.
Jared Harris.
And I was like,
I
if
mean-
I don't remember his name right now, this is not gonna go well.
Yeah. I wish so badly that you called him the wrong name. That would have been great.
Honestly, real quick, I would say overall through everything, like all the different shows, like getting to this point, you know, I just in my wildest dreams, I didn't think it would be these matchups at the end, and you know, any of these 4 obviously would be good to go forward. I actually, if I had to compare it all together, I think the grand finale should actually be Stranger Things versus House of the Dragon. But
Yeah.
it's not the way the cards fell, I guess.
Yep.
That draft.
Yeah, so I'm
That draft was
excited
crazy.
for next week, and then who knows? I mean, we'll see. We'll see come April how we feel after spending a month long basically arguing and debating with each other for 3 hours a night or 3 hours a week, if we ever feel like doing this again. But I have had a lot of fun so far with this. I would love to do it again with a different topic, because there's so many different topics that we could apply this to, and it would be a lot of fun.
Like movies.
Movies, games,
Or
I mean,
Character in the
anything.
universe.
Jordan
Star Wars.
hairstyles that have made appearances on Showboys. Yeah, so I will, one last thing. Jared Harris I would be more surprised if he didn't make it to the finals, just in the sheer amount of shows that he was in.
He was in
In
the
the
tournament.
Is he in
tournament?
House of the
Yeah.
Dragon?
Like, yeah, next season.
Probably
Just
somewhere.
wait. Yeah,
He's a dragon.
He's a dragon.
he voices the dragon. Yes. No. All right. So let's get out of here. 2 hours. Wow. And oddly enough, both rounds took about the same amount of time. So that's pretty cool. Good job tonight, guys. It was a lot of fun, and I'm excited for next week. If you haven't already, please subscribe here on YouTube and head over to Showboys Gaming YouTube channel. Subscribe over there. Join our Discord. Visit our website, showboysmedia.com. And don't forget to check out Patreon, patreon.com/showboyspodcast. Learn how you can support us today. We would greatly appreciate it. And we hope to see you back next week. Make sure you let us know in the comments and whatnot. If these are if House of the Dragon versus Chernobyl is what you guys had in the finals, or what shows you would have thought would have made it all the way through to the championship. Yeah, come ready to debate next week, Nick and Chad. I'm gonna have fun sitting up top and pushing start and stop on the old timer.
Can't
We'll
wait to
see-
hear it.
Yeah, we'll see you. We'll see you next week.
To answer Joe's question, no, he cannot make it back from the bathroom in time.
Epic fail. Extra
I'm-
large stream.
I'm telling you, man. Catheter's where it's at.
The funny,
Did it again. All right. He's still pulling up his pants. Here he comes.
yeah.
There
The
you
funny
go.
thing is, he's literally like 2 feet away from, like, that basement looks so much bigger than it actually is.
Right.
Right. I saw
It
I
takes
was
like 3
wow.
steps to the bathroom.
Unbelievable.